Hi there, it's Sarah here again from SH Millinery with another tutorial. And what I thought we'd talk about today is wireframe hats. Now, you can make a variety of hats making a wireframe as your base. And I thought we haven't really covered that, so we would do something fairly simple today. I mean, you can make top hats and all sorts with wireframe, but I'm going to keep this fairly simple. And of course what we need is wire. Now this is millinery wire. It comes in different grades, so different thicknesses, and it's cotton wrapped, so you haven't got the bare wire. Now you can use other gauge wire, you don't have to use millinery wire, but obviously this is meant for the job, so that's what we're going to use. And I should have cut the ties off first. Let's see if we. So this is the wire we're using here, and it's a millimetre in diameter, and as you can see it's cotton covered, and it's copper plated steel underneath. Okay, so what I thought we'd do is we'll make like a poke bonnet brim. Someone asked me the other day how would they make one, so I thought this would be a good way of talking about wireframing. Now, of course, it's all a bit springy and all over the show, so I'm going to get a rough amount of wire that I'll probably need. Let me just have a look. Yeah, I'm going to cut off a piece here and move all that out of the way. So I'm going to use this dolly block as a rough shape for the brim of the hat. And what I want to do is I want a big curve at the top. Now, if possible, join your wire at the top. Don't have it joining at the sides or near the face, just in case the wire should come through and cause some problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it round like that. So that's going to be roughly my head shape. Don't worry too much if it's springing about and it's not exact, because we will be manipulating it even more, but I want to sort of just get a rough shape to it. And then I'm going to bend it round the corners like so, and it's going to come up in the middle here. Now, so that we can keep it in place, I'm going to pin it onto the block. Okay, so just to keep it in place while I manipulate it. Wire into a rough shape for my brim. Now, this wire was probably a little bit too thick for the purpose I needed it for, but it was what I had to hand. So I'm going to just take it off so you can see. So what I've got is a back piece that will rest on the back of the head, the front part of the brim, which is much higher and tilted forward, and I've also put a strut of wire across the middle to support the two pieces. Now, you can buy little wire joiners. They're little brass ferrules like this, but to be honest, they're only any good for very thin wire, and I find half the time they fall off. So I've literally just put a piece of sellotape to join all the edges together to keep them firm. And now what we've got to do is cover the whole frame, because we need something to stitch to. So it's up to you what you use. I've got some bias binding here, but you can use tape, whatever you fancy, really. So what we've got to do is cover the entire frame, wrap it so that we've got something to stitch to. And I'm going to start at the middle back here. easier actually if you cut some lengths off. And I'm going to wrap. So that I've got something to stitch to. So what you've got to do now is wrap the entire frame. A bit neater than I'm doing, but just to show you. So I'm going to carry on doing that and come back to you in a moment. So as you can see, the wireframe has been made and it's been covered with bias binding so that I've got something to stitch on. And now I have to work out the fabric. So I've decided I'm going to use this pretty green, bit stuck all over me, sorry folks, this pretty green fabric for the outside of the hat. And what's quite nice is this actually has a bit of stretch in it, so this should work really well. Now I need to work out a piece for the top, and I'm going to cut it on the bias so that I can stretch it over the frame. Now I'm going to have to sort of roughly cut it because I don't have a pattern for it, because obviously I made it up as I went along, as I often do. So I'm going to cut round, so I've got sort of roughly enough fabric. I'm just going to put a couple of pins in just so I can see where I'm at. And one this side. Right. What will happen is this will be stretched over the frame like that. So I'm just going to cut that front piece off so you can see. Right. So that's going to be the outside of the brim. Now what I need to do is make the inside, which is going to be pleated in white cotton. And I'm going to need a piece that's about 3 times this size, because obviously I'm going to be pleating it. So I'm going to take this off and use this as a guide for my pleated section. So as you can see, it's a bit wonky, but there we are. So I've got some cotton lawn here, and I'm going to cut 1, 2, 3. 3 might be too much, so I'm going to use the width of this fabric, and I need it that wide obviously for pleating, so I'm just going to cut that. Yeah, it's going to be about right. So I've got a long strip. Now this isn't the sort of hat I normally make. It's not something that, you know, I would make and sell. But I'm always trying to think of things that you'd be interested in seeing. So I thought, oh, wireframe, we haven't done that. So that's what we're doing. But obviously, if you have things that you want me to show, do please say, and I will do my best to help. Right, so this is my wireframe. This is the inside, and this is the piece that I want to pleat. What to do is we've got to pleat this fabric onto this frame. Now, sometimes it's an idea to actually pin all your pleats first and then press them into position and then pin them on. So I'm going to make it so that the pleats go facing that way on that side and that way on that side. Okay, but I'm not going to press them on this time. I'm just going to pin them so you can see. Now you'll see why we had to cover the wireframe, because you need something to be able to pin and attach to. How it's going on this side, and then what will happen at the bottom, you've got to make those pleats all come in, because obviously you've got a lot of fabric, so you'll have to make them all come into the center like this. Right, I'm gonna, so like that. I'm going to go off and carry on pinning this properly, because it's easier to do without trying to film it at the same time, and then I'll show you how we carry on from the next stage. Right, so as you can see, I've pleated all the inside, wider pleats at the top, narrower pleats at the bottom. I've gone all the way around. Now what I'm going to do is trim off the excess and then sew this to the frame. Now be careful, don't trim off too much and leave yourself short. Now it is a bit difficult with all those pins in, but okay. And also I prefer to work from the middle either way. I don't know why, it's just a quirk. So what I'm going to do is fold over, double over to the back edge and stitch to my bias binding. So as you can see, the pleats have been sewn all the way around and sewn to the back of the frame, and I've trimmed off the excess fabric. If you want to press it, you would have to do it now, but to be honest, I don't think it needs it, and you'd have to avoid the wire. Right, now we need to work on the covering of the hat. So this was my piece I cut for here, if you remember. And what I'm going to do is, get it the right way around, I'll be fine. What I'm going to do is stitch it to here, like that, and then fold it back like that. So you're putting it right side to right side, a bit like you would any other hat. So get it fitted onto the frame, pinned in position, and you're going to do that and then pull it over. Okay. So I shall get on with that, come back to you in a moment. Right, so what I've done is I've sewn the fabric right sides together to the pleats, and I've stitched it across the top here, and now I'm going to pull it over like so. Get there in the end, like origami, isn't it? Now what we will be doing to this top here is sewing a trim, okay, because we want that edge to be really nice. But what we need to do first is finish the rest of the hat. To come together. Again, this is a long process, this type of hat. So what I've done is the green has been stretched all over. Don't worry that it's creased and that at the moment, because we're going to be still working with it a lot, and then we'll uncrease it afterwards. and I've just whip stitched the inside here. This edge doesn't matter if it's rough because we're going to be attaching the back, and then we're going to be putting millinery Petersham on this edge, and I'm going to be putting the trim all the way around here. So what we need to do is first work out how we're going to make our back. Now, I'll tell you, I'll make this up as I go along, so I had no idea what I was going to do until I decided how I was going to have the brim. And the brim sits really far back on the head. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to just pin this roughly to where my ears would be. Oh, well, I would if I could get the pins in. Now, you probably can have to work out where your ears are going to be, but I tend to know on these blocks where everything's going to be. But if not, mark them. It's always a good idea, actually, to mark with a pencil where ears are and where eyebrows are, so that you don't get the wrong measurements. Ugh. Arthritic fingers are playing up again. Right. Okay, so that is going to sit far back on the head like that, and then it'll be like that at the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some fabric wider than this width, because I'm going to be putting elastic in it, otherwise it won't fit to the head nicely. So, take my draw. So that round to there is 26 centimeters, about 10 inches. Now I'm going to double that because I'm going to be putting the elastic in, and also I'll need some for seam edges. So I'll get my fabric. So I'm going to want the piece 20 inches. Okay, let's have a look. Although that's probably a bit much because I might have it too gathered then at the back. I'm having a rethink on that. So it's 10, might do 10 and 15. 1.5 will probably do. Okay, yeah, I've decided 15 because I don't want it too gathered at the bottom. I want it a lot gathered at the top. Now I need to not work from a straight edge. I need to have it in the middle of the material because I want to cut a big curve. So, I hope you can see this all right. I haven't got anyone helping me today, so it's a bit difficult. Oh, caught on the pins. Right, so 15. So like that, and like that. And then what I want to do is I want to gather this all the way around in sort of a poof. So let me work out, if I've got 10 round there, I want to go from there up, which is about 6, and then I want it to poof out. So I want about 8 or 9. So let me find the middle of my 15 inches, 7.5. As I say, I'll work this out as I go along. I've never made this hat before. Probably never will again. I forgot what I said now. About 10 inches, didn't I? Right, okay. Okay. So I've got my halfway point there and my 2 points there. So then I fold it in half on the midway points, like so. Right, okay. Helps if I had it spread out on a proper table, but because I'm trying to video it and keep it in shot, because A lot of my early videos, I wasn't realising that things actually weren't in shot. So what I need is a piece of chalk, and I'm going to cut a curve. So I'm going to mark it round like, this is the kids' chalk. It's not so good. Right, but I want 2 of these because I want one as a lining and one as the back. Okay, so we're going to cut 2 of these shapes. So we've got our 2 half circle-y bits. And what I need to do is join these, so right sides together, because we're going to make an elastic casing area on the back of this. Okay, so I'm going to just join these 2 again with these 2 with a stitch on the sewing machine. Get the sewing machine, Sarah. So I've pressed my seam flat and I'm going to just top stitch. Don't want the elastic all waving about in there and having a horrible edge. Right, I've only got about 1/2 inch wide elastic, so I'm going to cut sew another channel to thread my elastic through. So I'm going to make that channel about 15 centimeters, something like that. Oop. Right, now when I thread my elastic through, I don't want to take it right to the ends. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. Because I don't want to have to stitch the elastic into the hat as such. So let's thread our elastic through. Right, so it's just disappeared in that end. And I'm going to stitch it down. Similar thing. So let's gather up our elastic. Right, this is when you want to see if you've made it the right size, and you want to really hold it up against your head and just double check. I don't really want it really tight, the elastic, but I want it to be able to hold the hat in place, and I think that's going to be perfect. So I shall take my pin out of one end and I shall sew that edge of the elastic down. Just poking it back in a bit. There we are. Now what I want to do is I want to run a gathering stitch all the way around this. So to do that, I put that on the biggest stitch I can get on the sewing machine, and I run a line of stitching round. So pull the bobbin thread up and it will gather all the fabric up into a nice gathered edge. Best thing to do is go from either end. So go round to the middle from one side and then round to the middle from the other. Way around. and we want to go from the edge, and we want to fit this all the way around. So you'll have to adjust your gathers as you go. Try and get the middle of the hat fairly in the middle, if you know what I mean. Now again, it doesn't matter if you've got a rough edge here because we're going to be covering that. If you wanted to overlock it or zigzag it, you could, but there's not going to be much point in that because you won't even see it. And the good thing about hats is they don't get washed, so it doesn't really make any odds. So I gather up our stitching. Or you can do it that way and then fold it over, but you've still got a rough edge inside, so it's up to you entirely how you decide to stitch it on. You either do it that way, which sometimes is easier when you're trying to go around curves and follow lines, so I might do it that way, but it'll have to be done by hand, as most of this hat has to be done by hand. No quick easy ways of doing it. So I'm going to carry on with that, and then we're going to get to the finishing touches. Right, so I've stitched the back on. I did it this way round. I stitched it on that way, and so I could fold it over. As you can see, that looks quite good. Now you've got choices. You can either put millinery buckram on the seam inside, or you can use bias binding. It doesn't matter, because it's not, as long as you stitch either side and cover all of that up. So we're going to do that, and also we're going to do the trim and the ties. Now what I've got is some wide ribbon here, and I want probably about 3. No, hang on, how wide is that hat? Yeah, I probably want about. I'll see how much I've got, and then I'll carry on if I need more. So again, remember, you've got to use the bobbin thread to pull up. So always keep an eye on where your bobbin thread is. Everyone, so we're carrying on. I've started to stitch my bias binding inside. I've just got to stitch the other side down. I haven't quite done that. My ribbon that I ruffled has been sewn all around the edge. I've got 2 long pieces of ribbon for the ribbon ties. I've melted the edges with a lighter to stop them fraying. I'm just folding this over double because I'd like a bit of a poofy bit. And I'm just going to stitch along here. So that gathers it up a little bit. And I'm going to stitch these now to the side, make it look very pretty. I hope you've enjoyed this video and had fun watching, and I try and provide as much information as possible when I'm doing my videos. And if you feel there's anything I'm missing out or you'd like to see, please do let me know, because it is quite hard sometimes knowing what you'd like to see. And I really appreciate all my subscribers and my members, particularly my members, who help support this channel so that I can carry on buying materials and showing you even more things. And if you do decide to become a member, you get lots of freebie goodies. April this month, you'll be getting a pattern, free pattern for a cloche hat, plus loads of other things, discounts coming up, etc. So do bear it in mind. Thanks ever so much for your time. The finished hat will be coming up shortly so you can see it, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much.